They told me I was assigned to the Queen's ward because I had the steadiest hands in the medical rotation. That was the official reason. I believed it for about 3 days. By the fourth morning, I already knew she took her water warm, not cold, trace of mineral salt, the way the high plateaus of the Sarvathi home range taste in late summer. I had never been to the Sarvathi home range. I had never been off Earth before this posting. I told myself it was a lucky guess when I brought the correct carafe without being asked, and watched her pause with it halfway to her lips, studying me with those deep amber eyes, the way you study a word you cannot place but know you've. Before, I said nothing. I was just the human medic. That was the safest thing to be. Her name was Vailindra. Her court called her highest. And they said it the way you say a word you've been told to say, without the weight behind it. She was a widow by Sarvathi reckoning. Her consort, Lord Sevrath, had died 11 years ago in the Ethis border collapse, and by her people's registry law, a queen of her line could only rebond with a lineage-verified Sarvathi male. She was, in the polite language of her advisors, past the optimal rebonding window. In plainer language, the kind I heard through thin partition walls, when the diplomatic staff thought I was out of earshot, they considered her politically finished. A queen kept in ceremony because removing her required more paperwork than keeping her. She did not look finished to me. She looked like someone carrying a long weight with her back perfectly straight, and I recognized that posture the way you recognize your own name spoken in a crowd. I worked the morning rotation. I changed the IV mineral feeds. I filed the daily wellness reports. I did not speak to her beyond what my duties required, and she did not speak to me beyond what courtesy demanded. And we existed in the same room for 6 days in a disciplined mutual silence that felt, to me, less like professional distance and more like two people being very careful near something fragile. On the 7th day, High Registrar Thavan came to the ward. He was a long-necked Sarvathi male, with the gray ridge markings of a senior court official and the particular expression of a man who has decided something and is performing the decision as a formality. He had a registry clerk with him, and a portable bonding scanner, the kind used to verify lineage at formal bonding ceremonies. He did not look at me when he spoke. Standard precautionary scan, he told the Queen. Human medical staff in prolonged proximity to a bonding-eligible royal requires registry clearance. Protocol. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked at me. Something in her face was very quiet. Of course, she said. I held out my arm. The scanner was cold. It ran its pass, beeped twice. And then it did something I was told later it had never done in 40 years of Sarvathi registry operation. It paused. The display cycled through 3 readout screens and stopped on a pale amber glyph I didn't recognize, pulsing slowly. Thovan stared at it. Clerk stared at it. Vailindra stood very still. A calibration error, Thovan said, but he said it quickly. The way you say something you need to be true. Run it again, Vailindra said. He ran it again. The amber glyph came back. It stayed. I didn't know what the glyph meant, but I watched the Queen's face as she read it, and I watched something move behind her eyes. Not shock, not joy, not grief. Something older than any of those. Something that had been waiting a long time to move. She dismissed the registrar and the clerk. Thovan left with the rigid posture of a man who would be filing counter motions before the hour was out. The door sealed. She stood across the room from me, with her hands at her sides, and the amber glyph still pulsing on the scanner display, on the table between us. I need to ask you something, she said. All right. When you were a child, were you ever afraid of water? I thought about it. The honest answer came without effort. No, I was afraid of losing sight of the shore, not of the water itself. I paused. I didn't understand the difference until I was older. Something in her breath changed. Not much. Enough. Sevrath was afraid of losing sight of the shore, she said. He told me that once. He told me he had never told anyone else. I had no answer for that. Not a useful one. So I said nothing, and the silence between us was very careful again. But different now. A different kind of careful. There is a word, she said. Her voice was steady. Steadier than her hands, which had come together at her waist. The fingers interlaced. A Sarvathi word, a private one. Not a formal bonding word, nothing in the registry. Sevrath and I agreed on it in the first year of our bonding, before anyone else existed in our lives yet. Something to say in the dark. I have never spoken it to anyone living. I never wrote it down. When he died, I thought that word died with him. She was looking at me with those amber eyes that had been studying me since the morning I brought her warm water without being asked. I don't know the word, I said. I want to be honest with you. Something crossed her face, the beginning of a door closing. But, I said. She went still. But there's something I've been not saying for 7 days, because I didn't have the right to say it. There's a sound I've had in my head since the first morning in this ward. I don't know if it's a word. I don't know what it means. It's there when I look at you, and it's been there every morning, and I can't make it stop, she said very quietly. Say it. I said it. Whatever it was. A sound that didn't belong in any human mouth. 3 low syllables that sat wrong in the air of a medical bay on an orbital station, above a world I had only been assigned to 6 weeks ago. Her hand went to her mouth. Not both hands, just one, the left one. The one with the scar along the thumb's base that she had never, in 6 days, shown to anyone. She didn't know I had noticed it. She didn't know that, when I saw it the first day, I had felt a recognition so specific and so sourceless that I had spent the following nights telling myself it was nothing. She stood there with her left hand pressed to her lips, and her eyes were wet, but they were not broken. They were wide. And something was moving in them that looked like the long distance between grief and disbelief, finally collapsing into something neither of them. I did not move toward her. It wasn't my place to move. I had nothing to claim. I was a medic from Earth who apparently carried something in him that didn't belong there. And whatever the registry glyph meant, I had not earned the right to make it mean more than the moment. I'm glad you're still here, I said. That's all I know how to tell you. Where I was before. I'm glad you're still here. The door opened. Thavan and 2 senior advisors had apparently not needed the full hour, stood in the frame with the air of men arriving to correct an error. Thovan's eyes went to the scanner display, to the pulsing glyph, the Queen's face, and then to me with an expression that had the architecture of contempt and the foundation of something closer to fear. Highest, he said, this individual has no standing under registry law. Any anomalous reading is subject to challenge. A human cannot, Thovan. Voice was quiet, not raised, the kind of quiet that doesn't need volume. Do you know what the amber glyph means? A pause. It indicates a partial lineage resonance. An anomaly, not a. It indicates a resonance consistent with a previous bonding record match, she said. You know that. The registry hasn't produced one in my lifetime. You also know that registry law has no clause for impossibility, only verification. She turned to the clerk at his shoulder, who had gone the particular pale of someone who did not want to be in this room. Is the verification protocol active? The clerk looked at the scanner, at the glyph, at the Queen. Yes, highest. Then the protocol runs. She turned back to Thovan. You may file whatever motions you think are appropriate. You may challenge the calibration. You may take it to the full high registry. And when you have done all of that and the glyph is still there, you will come back to this room and tell me what the registry says to do next. She did not raise her voice. She did not look at me. She was looking at Thavan. And in the set of her shoulders and the straightness of her back, I recognized that posture again. The one I'd been recognizing since the first morning. The weight carried well. The back perfectly straight. Thavan looked at her. Then he looked at me. Something in him settled, not into acceptance. Into the kind of stillness that precedes it. He bowed his head. It wasn't the full court acknowledgement, not yet. But it was a bow. The advisor beside him, an older woman with gold rank seams on her collar who had not said a word, bowed a half-second later. And the clerk, who had no political stakes at all and was possibly acting purely on instinct, bowed after that. I stood in the medical bay with my sleeves still rolled up from the scanner, and watched the court of a Sorvathi queen conduct a silent reckoning with something the registry had no category for. Vailendra finally looked at me. She didn't say anything. She just looked at me with those amber eyes, and the scar on her left hand, and 11 years of a weight she'd been carrying with her back perfectly, straight, and she looked at me like someone reading the last page of a letter they started a very long time ago. You should rest, I told her. Scan results won't process until morning. The corner of her mouth moved, not quite a smile, something quieter. I know, she said. I'll sleep well tonight. I didn't say anything else. I gathered my instruments, filed the notation in the wellness log, and left the ward the way I always did. Just the medic, finishing his shift. But at the door I paused without turning around, because there was one more thing I'd been carrying for 7 days. And it didn't weigh anything except everything. "I would have found you again," I said. "Whatever it took, I think I always do." I didn't hear her response. I heard her breathe, one long, quiet breath that sounded like 11 years, setting something down. That was enough.